often. After a short film, we will introduce Silke Burmester, Dunja Hayali, what were the other names? Gniffke and I'm sorry, didn't get another name. Journalism on the internet. Neutrality? Objectivity? In what kind of country are we living? Via Twitter. I think the AfD is right-wing populism after all. Why should I forbid myself to say things or others? Freedom of expression is not possible without an opinion. I'm so glad so many people are here. We want to talk about journalism and journalists on the internet in a time where colleagues are being attacked increasingly. We can see this in Monitor. All the colleagues can see this. Okay, this is being filmed. Wow. They're in the crossfire, and we want to talk especially if it's not, if we shouldn't talk generally about our roles as journalists, not only in the internet but in society, and if the framework for that has changed so much that principles we had so far and hold valid before, what does it mean if people especially in the public broadcasting, shout at us that we should be neutral? And are these the core values that we should defend, or should we shouldn't we turn to journalist activism like Egon Evin Kish? And shouldn't we shape and frame debates as well? Because we are in an exceptional state in this society that now demands special roles from journalists. In the beginning, we want to talk about this on a stage, but later also with you in public. I'm very glad that Silke Burmester is there, who worked as the war reporter about the media war for Taz for many years. Kai Gniffke, maybe many know from as Mr. Tagesschau, the boss of ARD Aktuell, who stands for all who hold very much a big distance in the public broadcasting sphere, and Dunja Hayali, from her, who I learned that she is at Republica for the first time, even though you were talked about last year, but not with you, and who has learned in a very special way to be in focus, being in a hate storm with tweets and Facebook posts. Great that you're here. Thanks. And especially quickly about my person, I'm about from this great show on the analog world. Monitor has been around for 52 years. and I have been around for 52 years. And we've learned in a special way as a opinionated magazine that is on TV and on the internet, what happens if you're picked out from, especially right-wing, if people think that they don't, that they shouldn't just criticize the magazine itself, but the people behind it, and I have experienced that. So let's jump into the discussion. The journalist as an observer or a player. Silke, you've thought about this for a long time. Silke, where do you see yourself? So I see myself as both. It's a question of what I'm working on right now. I'm a free journalist, and do I have the assignment to talk about an organic farmer who has a road planned through his yard, or do I talk about a societal problem where I think you should engage in a debate? And it's very important for me to differentiate between what kind of debate I'm engaged in and what kind of role I play there. For me, it's pretty clear that there's no objective journalism. We are shaped by civilization and society, and we always bring ourselves into that. And then it's I'm so much a human being, and a human being who thinks about things and then gets excited and agitated about things, and it's impossible for me to take myself back all the time. And I'm at the intersection between I'm activist because I say I'm for or against this, and I make a point about it. But I also state this is important for me because of this, and then I draw the line there. For Tagesschau, it's a different discussion because it's. People are told to be neutral, but on the other hand, you are very subjective as well, and they have an. He was thematized, for example, 2014 in a discussion between Glenn Greenwald and Keller from New York Times. You choose, those who choose have certain interests, and if I see how right-wing, especially there's interest to push certain topics, for that even Tagesschau didn't have to, couldn't take themselves out of it anymore, making a topic out of things. Then you can see that these old terms of neutrality and objectivity that aren't even valid for a big ship like Tagesschau.
Well, I'm pretty much biased, and we always try to be objective, but we always know that no one has the ultimate objectivity. But to get a hold of this subject, we are not there to drive around things we are not really interested in. But we have to. We have to look at it in a whole way, and we have to give the facts. But stuff we are not allowed to do, actually. We shouldn't tell people what they have to think and what kind of opinion is the right one. And we shouldn't do that like subcutaneously. It's, we're not supposed to tell people you should think this is bad and this is good. We are there to show the discourse in the society and to base this on facts, and that's what we choose. The criteria we have it's open, it's known to everyone, but not everyone has to take it like this. But we build the source for discourse. Well, you want to image stuff, and you do it at Tagesschau as well. do you see the difficulty of showing the wrong pictures? Right-wing people usually tell you, well, there's this refugee issue, and it was big in the social media, and Tagesschau had to report on stuff because it was so big. You shouldn't only show what's happening, and well, that's not a campaign, but if we have a debate in this country about the criminality of refugees, are they more or less criminal than other people? This is our job to show this. I know what I'm talking about because we had this this murder in Freiburg. We decided not to report on this, and it's really bad. But this is not what has to be put in the Tagesschau, because otherwise we would have a big job to show all this. But if there's a debate in the following days, even the biggest people in the government talk about this, then we can't just tell, oh, no, this topic, it could be abused. We just don't report on this. But we have the job to show the facts. I think this is what we have to do, and this is what people expect us to do for their fees. So, Dunja, I'm writing about this. So, how did your own opinion change? Did you go into full detail on debates, even with people from the right-wing area? Did that also change your own image as a journalist? To play with them, basically. It's always too easy to only talk about right-wing people. It's a big topic about when you talk about shitstorms, but you can't only say that people talking about hate are always from the right-wing area. But my image on journalism hasn't really changed. I follow the other two. When it comes to objectivity, not everyone is really objective, but we try to. And we're also journalists, and we learned our handiwork to know what we are allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do, and to be focused on not being objective and stepping back and looking at things as a whole. We're subjective, but we're trying to be objective. How does that work? Well, if you figure that you are subjective in a way, and what does it do with me? And why am I annoyed in this situation? Maybe because I've experienced something personally. For example, you have someone you have to care for. You have kids going to school and talking about their daily stuff they do there, and you have a talk with the educational experts, and you have to take your own emotionalities back. And this is a completely different approach. We learn to work on this as basically with our tools, no matter if it's mainstream. We have to select. We decide what kind of news are shown in the Morgen magazine, because we can't show everything from the whole world. It's like the sack of rice in China. You can see it falling on Facebook, literally. And we have to see what's really news, what's relevant, maybe also what we can talk about. These are things we're doing on a daily basis. But there's also, for us journalists, the opportunity to talk about things on Facebook. There's my private commenting option, because we can't just be there privately. But even if we're all pretty neutral, but we still have to stand for our own ideas and wishes, and about respect, and against racism or extremism or Islamophobic and stuff like that, and anti-Semitism. This is also my opinion as a journalist, and if anyone has a point who wants to make, they want to make for me or against me, that's okay.
Can I say one thing? I want to say one thing. Well, you notice at Morgen Magazin that she's steered by other forces. The easiest example is the refugee top barrier. Horst Seehofer, I would have asked, what would you do with the 200,000 first refugees coming in? What would you say? And then I would ask Cem Özdemir, what would he do without a barrier for refugees? You can't take up anybody. But isn't it too easy for you? Like that you say on the other one hand I'm neutral, on the other hand, but I'm also the private Dunja Hayali that in face of these important values is the activist journalist. But do we have to put everything in drawers and categorize everything? But this is this is the role, understanding of roles. But if I try to categorize three images of journalists, there's the objective journalist, perceiving journalist, who has to do with nothing and just tries to describe things the way they are, with the danger that you become the longer arm of demagogues. And then there's the activist journalists on the other side, who says we are who says we're in special times and we have to lead discussions. And then there's the middle ground, obviously, because it's so these roles. If I say, if I'm on Twitter or if I see Facebook comments or if I do a comment on Tagesthemen, I think about these roles and this division. There's in times of this permanent back channel, they don't. This division doesn't exist. But if I can say something about, just open any kind of newspaper, as said, or whatever. There's like reporting and commentary and other things, and there's one thing and the other. But one thing is very much distinguished. There's been mistakes been made, but there've been a little mixture. But the chance is there on the internet, and it's mixed. But I will attest to that. But I don't like this patronizing view that I think everybody has their right to opinion if they make that clear that it's an opinion, and it's not about party politics. It's freedom of expression is in our constitution and also in the law that regulates the public broadcasting and I don't know. I don't know what the third one. Well, activist journalism. It's the one that you just described. It's about defending values, and you can say it's there's journalists who say we defend these values, and we have something to defend, and then you have your opinion on Twitter or myself maybe, and there's. And even Kai Gniffke sits down and says, even if we don't call AfD right-wing populism anymore in Tagesschau, I still believe that they are. So no, there's no parole there. But we need to accept that the fact that we don't want to be patronizing, but we. Especially in the beginning of the AfD and when they got up Pegida phase, we had some sort of missionary attempt, and between the lines, between the lines, everybody said we asked us to don't dislike them, even if no one told us this. But yeah, at some point we said, then we said right-wing populist AfD and so on, and at some point we noticed the party is known; it doesn't need this label, but because what people felt is that this label stigmatized them, and it doesn't need this label, and we don't want to give it to people in the between the lines. We think they're still right-wing populists, but they say it themselves. But we don't have to attach the tag everywhere. We don't to rub it in everyone's noses. We said internally, yes, it says it is important for us, and I'm very agitated about it if I write about these things, but I've got to get rid of this because I shouldn't get too agitated about it. But if you are agitated about it, then you have the possibility of giving a commentary at Tagesthemen. So it's for you. The question is, what will you do with that? And in the special, in a Soul news magazine, it's not about this. So you need to go to the comment section. For me, as a free journalist, and I'm not in these institutions. I have the feeling that I'm a journalist from the background that I'm a human, and because I'm a human, I can sign these kind of things that Dunja said, and I act as a journalist, and I can say, well, if you don't like me, you're free to not like me. The ARD doesn't have that. It isn't that easy for the ARD, but you have to show facts in the news. But you can't just say they're idiots in the news, And for me, it's a certain kind of luxury to say this, like they might maybe allowed to think to hate me. We need to differentiate here what formats what we're talking from. I expect from Georg Restle to be unleashed in his magazine. Even since Bednar's time, he always got 50% of his viewers agitated, and it's part of the concept, and it's understandable. They have a standing point. From activist journalists, they have their space, but never can we make this a basic principle of journalism that activism has nothing to lost. There's nothing to be found. It shouldn't be found in Tagesschau, for example. We need to say that we need to allow for every person watching us that they create their own opinion.
So, does anyone have something to open this bottle? So, no activism in Tagesschau, that's the basic principle for us. So, he's right, Tagesschau, it doesn't belong to Tagesschau, but in your own show like Monitor or Panorama, or when I start in the summer, as long as we mention it that this is my own opinion, it's basic, it's legitimate, and I'm already asking myself why we're back to AfD again. Well, I want to contrast this. We're not making activism. We're a bit like Tagesschau, and we are thinking about the topics we want to report on. And how do you divide this from your own Twitter account? When we're talking about Monitor, like Tagesschau, we are always asking ourselves, why do we have to talk about Syria differently to the Tagesschau? There's some things that don't happen in the Tagesschau because it's only a short thing in 15 minutes. So we are focusing on special things, and we want to show you the world how it doesn't exist in the mainstream media. And we don't really have the space in other shows. So we want to do this with a certain impetus, but this is the one thing. Well, I want to. What really annoys me from in this discussion is there's this news journalism that's objective and neutral, and on the other hand, there's the activist journalism. For example, Monitor, who's there to explain the world to you. I only think we are a little more honest because we tell about our decisions and why we have a certain stand from journalism. But we shouldn't, well, pretend, for example, in the Syria conflict, that we don't have an agenda, even if it's self-chosen or not. So where does this agenda come from? It's a journalistic agenda of relevance, that's not an agenda someone tells us. We decide what's relevant. This news is important, and that's why we are talking about this. But this is not objective per se, and this is not objective per se, because we have special topics. You can't compare Tagesschau with Monitor, plus minus, Panorama, Frontal 21, Frontal 21. Yeah, ZDF also has shows. You didn't know that I'm switching to ARD. Well, that's completely different genres. And the Tagesschau is the Tagesschau, and shows like I told you about, well, people expect people to position stuff. So there's one perspective, there's one point of view, and the viewer has the opportunity to think about it. That's really surprising me. Well, isn't the way we choose doesn't define what our point of view is? Well, we're not only talking about stuff that doesn't have a place in other shows. If you're talking about Syria, there's one point of view that's really special. In Damascus, some guy from Damascus, for example, it's completely different. It's a completely different genre, basically. Or do I get this wrong? I think, well, to say that Monitor is a little bit more honest, like the Tagesschau, it's difficult. Let's say so. I don't know why they're applauding. I think that people watching Monitor, you know where good and bad is, and you don't play around with that. If you do it in a transparent way, what's our point of view? That's perfectly fine, and it's legitimate, and it's like the publicistic standpoint. But as a news deliverer, I can't really imagine us doing that, because we're not supposed to do this. Because, I'm sorry to say that, but this is populism if we would do this. So we are skipping this. So we're not talking about Tagesschau because we don't want to have a battle here in different formats. How do you see that if we're standing outside, if we have war reports, or if you see how the Tagesschau looks at stuff, and if you say that objectivity is something we can't work with, and whatever you call it, how objective do you think is news in general, not only in the public broadcasting, but all media dividing between news and commentary? Shouldn't we just ditch this term of objectivity, basically? I think it's difficult to put all news formats in one kettle, basically. I have a problem with, for example, someone's reporting from some place, no matter if it's Syria or Paris, and you have one of those really great guys reporting, and then he's only asking men. For example, me as a viewer, I have a problem. Where are the women? That's something that we're starting with when we're talking about objectivity. I think what's most important is that you have a quality discussion. I think the most important is the division and the transfer of the transparency to readers and viewers, to show them where are we and in what kind of format are we. And this is it's most difficult on the internet, because they don't show you what they're talking about and who they are and from what point of view. There's someone being on Twitter, for example. I'm private here, and they are commenting everything happening in the world. That's starting at this point, and it's also ending at that point. I think it's really important to make sure who's talking to what and when.
Is it true that the classical commentary is dissolved in the internet? Report and commentary, it depends on the internet, on the content. I could believe that my editor-in-chief or my boss, my new TV channel is really glad that I'm on Twitter, and on the other hand, we're free to do whatever. I could write whatever I wanted if I didn't know where the balance, and it's a very, very fine line between what I'm allowed to do or what I should do and what not. But I'm there privately, but I'm always the person with the ZDF logo in the background. But in my house, no one has an access to that, what I do. I wonder, what do you do? How free can I actually say that? Like you do this from time to time. How open can you be about that? We did a free Dennis Gala for Dennis Yücel and got Ingo Zamparoni for the moderation. He had to have this allowed by Tagesschau. Tagesschau editor-in-chief said, you can do this. How is it? So the question is, how is it about Ingo Zamparoni, who is the anchorman for Tagesthemen and has the seriosity? And of course, we want him and he stands there for journalism, and we are happy to have him as the presenter of this evening. But there's an intersection there. How do you? Where are the boundaries? I thought about this a lot. Because, is it okay for us to do this? Because we don't, and the answer was that we don't operate in a vacuum, and our guidelines are democracy and peace between the people and stuff like that, understanding, and because it's all about freedom of the press, and we don't live from anything more than from freedom of the press. So it should be that Ingo Zamparoni should live. The question is there a split eye, like split self between? It's difficult, and I was very happy that the ARD is a shift of culture, and right now, or like it's clear that the ARD is happy that people are active in social media, and it wasn't like that from the start, and then noticed that it's. The notice that it's not anymore like you have to have to talk through a press release in the house and stuff like that. Yeah, back in the days it was you have to had everything you issued signed by your boss, and now it doesn't work anymore like that. And you know, things that you learn for tens of years, decades in ARD suddenly is dissolved. And for me, we're not a startup, and it's very sympathetical like that. I like it that. But the institution, it's important that this institution thinks about these things. But they also say, like, yeah, just do it, and then, yeah, think about that you are a representative of ARD outside like that. That's legitimate, and that the company says that. And there's no restrictions. It doesn't say anywhere, don't do this, don't do that. It says somewhere that you shouldn't attack your colleagues, and that's sad that you should even have to say that. But we have different standards for ARD employees on one side on the internet, and on the other hand, public appearance in the TV. On the private account, it's private. It's not regulated at all. And it's a very, very fine line, yes. It works great with you. But everybody's allowed to drop conclusions and put a position there that if you hold your face into the camera, they will question your impartiality, but there's no, it's not forbidden. And that's why I said I'm not, I very, very rarely say, I very, very rarely say something about party politics. When Andrea Nahles said about something misunderstandingly, then I said something that about too, but sometimes I think that, you know, people from some parties are sometimes a little crybabies, but that doesn't matter. I think it's important that that no serious journalist, that they should generate reach through agitation. That's not what they should do. They shouldn't be divisive. I should, you know, stand for something, but my goal shouldn't be to be the divisive or to differentiate just between black and white. And there's different blogs, you know them from former journalists or still journalists, and I know that those who write, if they write a polemic article or radical or agitative, that it gets more clicks, then that generates money, and we need to have a look at it. That's not only the quote-unquote journalists, but also other media. If Bild started a campaign, or Focus generates headlines, because clickbaity headlines, because we are responsible for what we implement in a headline, and it's a little chaotic with us as well. But it's important to. There's certain media that are on the forefront of this, and that's not only bad journalism, but it's also dangerous. And then one thing. What you said before, that's also not possible with journalists. When Martin Schulz was elected with 100% as the head of SPD, because it wasn't just the certain party, certain media that, you know, stand on a certain sign. It was also, you know, everybody. It was celebrated everywhere, and I was wondering what happened there. So you have to also stand to your mistakes, and we're not. We are human, and we make mistakes all the time. So, but you should lift your arm and say the mea culpa. That's you know, it was formulated wrongly. It was, you know, put to a certain point, and you know, people, you know, you should be able to say that.
Well, there's conflicts that reach us when you're on the internet as a journalist. We have a quarter of an hour for answers or questions, basically. There's a microphone. Anyone can just raise their hands. There's someone in the back. So where's the microphone? It's coming. It's a long way. So, well, yeah, I'm walking to the back. I'm coming soon. Well, and get up, ideally. So, Rika Ammermann, you explained why you think that a pure news magazine is more objective than a show that comments it in times of digital TV. There's the question, what is objective news? What is the objective decision, what you talk about? And how do you define your rules of objectivity in the news? We say directly, this is the criteria we choose news from. It's like this every day. We have to fit this into 15 minutes of a Tagesschau. On the top is how important do we think some event is? How many people are affected by that? How influential are people? And what happens to the world when this is over? And in the second place, we see that are there special images? Is something more disputable than others? And there's also cultural closeness. And then we are just basically sieving these news. And at this point, because we are always talking about objectivity, and it's really interesting, why it's so important to us not to give people an opinion. If I see other countries in Europe or the USA, what's happening in the society, where societies basically break over, and at the moment we have a really good situation, but there's tendencies that stuff is breaking up, and we have to be in dialogue, and we don't want to have groups parting from others. No matter if it's ZDF or ARD or the Tagesschau, this is an important role, not to divide people and just to sort people by good and bad. We're just giving the discourse information, and people can make their own opinion. It's not our job to make people not voting for the AfD, for example. So the next question in the back. Why are your editorship meetings not open for the public? I can say something on this. I'm really, really excited. My answer, this is not really made serious. 1 hour is enough because it's always moving in circles. Well, then answer this. We did this as an experiment. We used to have the show Monitor. This was a special monitor show where people were able to discuss, and we made this on the internet. And 1 hour after the show, we discussed on the questions why we did this topic and why we did that topic. And honestly, there was not really a lot of reach. We spent our whole night doing this, and we discussed, and when we decided to ditch this option. But if there's a need to do this, we would just go on with this. So another question in the back. Well, you can see information. It's not only taking but also giving. So I think it's important. We should be open on our topics and our discussion and why we decide stuff, because this is a discussion we shouldn't only do internally but with the society. And if there's a need, we should focus on this discussion. Yeah, we should do that. This is the next question. I have a question on objectivity. In most jobs, I become what I am. Am I just a butcher or someone checking tickets? My job, well, makes me. And if I'm a journalist, it should make something special out of me. But if you want to talk about objectivity, and here I'm private here, and here I'm in my job, that doesn't work. Because if it's right from the psychological aspect, well, objectivity isn't really easy to achieve, because we're always talking about self-regulation and soft skills I don't want to censor myself. I'm not thinking there's a job area and a private area. Well, if I may, maybe you have to change objectivity to professionality. Would be much easier. Well, there's a comparison. If you have an architect, he's working for the FDP, and he would make a house for an SPD member as safe as for the FDP guy. And if there's some doctor having someone from a different party, he would just heal him. If I'm a journalist, you would want a professional approach on your job. I'm not expecting anyone to be political eunuchs, basically, but we shouldn't just show them openly in our show. But then, why shouldn't you just exchange neutrality for professional distance? It's always difficult because we're not really neutral, but we're trying to. You sound like it's not existent, but if you have someone doing their job and they're doing it, if we have a colleague, just you're asking a colleague if you're seeing that you're not the right person to do that, and we're always working on this, and we are supposed to see who's the best person to do this, and these are decisions that are made. Shouldn't we just talk about journalism just being a job, and that's we should follow this, and everything that comes afterwards, opinions or a satire, these are different things. We should name differently, and we're trying to be neutral. In Tagesschau, you have the 5 W questions, and afterwards you're maybe talking to a correspondent. It's a little different in the Heute Journal, where you have a news magazine. It's important with all of you outside to explain this, because I don't want to talk about this as a way, but there's different approaches, and we have to explain it, and we have to be transparent about that, and it's really important. No question. Well, the girl with the beer. So, Nora, my name. We had a little battle on Monitor being more honest than the Tagesschau. But I sometimes listen to the Aufwachen podcast. There's some things that are speculation that are talking about that a format like the Tagesschau, Tagesthemen, they have more room for speculation because we don't know who's behind something. If you have a report, I don't know the opinion of the reporter, so I can't really, divide this, because if I know a journalist and his opinion, I can just take it apart from the report. Well, he has a special opinion, and I could see something else. In the Tagesschau or Tagesthemen, it's more difficult to be transparent, and it's not really well known how decisions are made. And with this lack of transparency, I don't know the people, the faces. So just if you're talking about honesty and not being honest, and it's really a lot more difficult to make it transparent.
To continue with here, as a learned journalist, a self-critical question. I know you learned your tools very professionally, but you're personally in the internet, and doesn't it, radiate towards what you display on the TV? Yes. Yes. Yes, it's true, and as a journalist you have to notice and make this clear to yourself. And I can sit here, you wouldn't notice my my opinion on the Morgen magazine theoretically, and I can give you 100 examples, but everybody will think of that, and I know that, and I'll tell that, I explain that, but you will still think that this is the Dunja Hayali who has this and this opinion. So it's a very, very fine line on which you are walking. The woman with the beer said, that's true that on one hand, and on the other hand, I don't know how many people would really be interested in all the members of an editorial team and the backgrounds of that. So it's a dilemma in which we are, and it's fantastic. It's really full, and it shows that how big the interest is there. So the question is: are we controlled, or are we leftist green? Are we system whores? Are we Merkel fans? I see this as a chance, actually, to go in this communication for this profession and for our work, and advertise for our work, and to say what is possible, what isn't, what isn't possible, and what are we doing with our work, what is good. And I think it's the same. Yes, there's an interest in this every day. Therefore, since 11 years, I've been writing to the Tagesschau blog for 11 years now. That we have a format where we invite people, writers of hate comments, to talk to us. We will soon go out as an editorial team. It's a little difficult for the target audience of 80 million people, but it's yes, we accept that, and it can be fruitful. Yeah. First row, one question. If you notice that as a journalist that something is fake news, how do you work with that as a journalist to? So you still got to be partial. So you still have to be partial if you debunk fake news. How do you? So I think that's the point where I see myself as a journalist, to stand there. These are the criteria for truthfulness and for rightfulness, and from these criteria I can say if something is true or not, and from these criteria I can derive if something is true or not, and if something is fake. There's the fact finder from the Tagesschau with Patrick Gensing, who tries this, others who try this. And this role we have more and more. We're more and more in this role. But if you can believe this, that if we go up viral with a Monitor story in the net, we have 10 or 20,000 comments, and where we can't deal with that with the community and with all the. Like the community management can't get behind all these comments and the truthfulness or fakeness. So, and this is This is also the task of this discussion of today. We want to open ourselves towards this debate. We also invited Silke Burmester as a token, and also because she's a really clear, smart observer. And I will say thank you very much to Dunja. Okay, it's very important what you said. There's a pledge to the question. Ask of everybody, please give us some time on one or the other time. Like, as so many people expect after 3 seconds that we know everything, who, what, way, when, or we don't report on it. Then people say it's fake news because they want to keep it under the carpet, lying press and stuff like that. Time is one, and we need something. The other is an ask of, because we talked about these hateful comments in the community, to all publishers and TV houses. We need to educate much more people, and there's got to be much more people who take care of the comments, because if we can't take care of these comment sections. If we hand this to our community management, then it's if we let go of these, then the opinion becomes that half of Germany has a certain opinion, and that's just not true. And we need to be more active and take more care of hateful comments, and people need to. I need to also say something about it. These people who, there's two kinds of people. People who really hate on you and try and attack you, and there's people who just sort of say their opinion. This organized attacking, trolling of people, of institutions, of TV stations, this is more important than Karl-Heinz, who says, Ms. Hayali, you're from the country, from country. So this is an ask of the. I will close this with an ask. Please understand this forum and our daily work as an offer to the society to have this dialogue with us. We wanted to lead this dialogue with you, and thank you very much for listening. Thanks for listening to this translation. I'm Julian.
I'm Kati.
Thank you very much. Bye.